I'm CEO and co-founder of a company called Rainbird. You might recognize us from the lanyards. We're an automation technology company. My team are here. If you'd like to talk a bit about what we're doing, we're at booth B15, I think, downstairs. I'm sure they'll be keen to talk to you afterwards. But I'm going to talk to you today a bit about how firms can make the most of this explosion in AI and automation technology. I'm going to talk about why we think it's really important to keep a human in the center of what you're doing when you're building these systems. And I'll talk a bit about some of the pitfalls that we might encounter along the way in implementing some of these kinds of changes in some of this technology. You've probably heard quite a bit already about AI, and it's pretty obvious to see that there is huge opportunity for AI in the legal space. Gartner released a report recently that shows that in-house legal counsels are spending more than 50% of their time renewing and reviewing simple things like NDAs, doing document tagging, the kinds of manual processes that you might have your junior staff or contract lawyers doing, expensive, time-consuming, not always chargeable. And the question is this really what we train for? Actually, by automating a lot of these rote tasks, this manual stuff, you can free people up to do the more high-value tasks to deliver better service to your clients. Using AI-powered automation technologies, experts in law are able to go and deliver better services to their clients. You're able to build better relationships with your clients. You're able to prevent the kind of manual errors that creep into work. You can increase efficiency and actually deliver whole new innovations and whole new kinds of routes to revenue and reaching customers. And maybe I'll show you a little bit of that later on. The message is quite simple. You can use this technology to save time, save costs, and streamline your services. Probably seen quite a bit about the rhetoric around AI being about turkeys voting for Christmas, something someone said earlier about job losses, this being about replacing people. We don't see that at all. We see that AI actually is really most beneficial when it's combined with people. What we're really talking about is augmenting people to get the most out of the human and machine collaboration. Actually, you do that by innovating. And innovations that combine human and machine collaboration allow you to get the best out of the way that people are operating in their day-to-day jobs and the way that people are offering services. But you can only do this by offering innovation and be innovative in the way that you're developing these services. And so, of course, the question then is how innovative are law firms and how ready are law firms to adapt and approach this kind of new technology? And this, I think, is a really great stat that talks to some of the problem that we're seeing. This was some research that was done recently by the Law Society, and they found that 73% of firms agreed that they need to adopt AI to get ahead by 2025. But only 53% have actually said that they've got any kind of plans to implement it. You can see that there's actually a big gap here between what we understand we need to do and how we're going to achieve it. And there's actually various other reports that show that investment in technology in this space is not improving and increasing fast enough to match growing client demand. So when you couple this with the changing ways that clients are wanting to interact with technology and with law firms, you can see that we actually have a really big problem. Actually, Thomson Reuters did some research recently that shows that the alternative legal services market is now something like $10 billion and growing really, really fast. They've also shown that something like 37% of clients and 43% of small businesses are turning to the internet for their legal provision. So the way people are wanting to access technology is changing rapidly. So what is the barrier to being able to adopt these new technologies, particularly in this space, although we see this all over? And we see two key barriers. Those barriers are understanding and they're risk. I think lawyers are justifiably nervous of the risk involved in handling the kinds of data that a lot of these technologies rely on. A lot of that data is personally identifiable data. It's very sensitive data. There are data protection implications around understanding those data. And it is absolutely crucial that the technology and the AI that we're deploying is deployed legally, it's deployed ethically, and crucially without bias. And I'll talk about bias a bit in a minute. But we also need to make sure that the technology that we're deploying retains the complexities and the nuance of good legal advice. What we're not talking about here is reducing law down to a binary right or wrong kind of automation model. Now, there are many ways that you can go about doing that, but in building systems that take the human expertise that you've already got in your organization and wrapping that up into models that you can deploy, by taking the expertise that you have right across from senior partners all the way down to energetic new lawyers well, then you actually have a shot at solving some of these problems. The president of the Law Society recently emphasized this by saying AI systems must have a human in the loop to protect fundamental freedoms and ensure accuracy and transparency. We can overcome these barriers of understanding and risk by adopting transparent, human-down AI, as opposed to starting these models with data that we don't really understand. But firms need to pinpoint how they're going to use AI to really get the benefits from this. And there is no doubt, and I'm sure you've seen in a lot of the talks today, that the legal industry is changing because of technology. And to deal with these changes and to attract and retain the best talent, firms need a bespoke solution, a considered and careful approach to an AI strategy, not a quick fix, not innovation for innovation's sake. And I'm sure you've probably seen some of the work that Deloitte have done recently, showing there's a kind of tipping point coming in the next year or so in the industry. Actually, they've gone a bit further by saying that by 2025, we predict a profound transformation in the profession due to the quickening pace of technological developments, shifts in workforce demographics, and the needs to offer clients more value for money. Law firms must have a clear strategy for dealing with these challenges now if they want to remain competitive and ensure they attract and retain the best talent. Now, we think talent is a really key part of this. And the question is, how do law firms become AI experts? Well, we think with the right understanding and with careful execution, all law firms have the ability to become technology providers, to become technology companies, if that's the way that they want to go. What's required is an implementation process that combines the best of technology with your legal experts, bringing these two fields together and actually giving the best of that human-machine collaboration. It gives you the best shot at bringing these two things together. I'll give you an example of what this looks like in practice and how we're helping with some of this education problem. Taylor Wessing are a Rainbird client. As part of their onboarding into Rainbird, Taylor Wessing wanted to upskill their teams on AI in general and on our tool and our technology. They did that because they wanted to embrace this technology wholesale so that they can really get the benefits from understanding this space right across their organization. So what we did is we provided a structured program through Rainbird University, which is an education platform that we run and we own, to both train them on our technology, but also to give their teams a broad general understanding of AI so that they can understand how these tools can be applied in the workplace to solve their specific business challenges that they have ahead of them. Now, Kevin Harris, who's IT director at Taylor Wessing, said that anyone joining the legal profession probably has some exposure to AI already because training establishments, universities, well, they are talking about AI at least. But for anyone who's been here more than maybe 4 or 5 years, well, they won't have had that kind of exposure. So this has given them a way to go through a program that gives them at least that kind of degree level understanding of what AI is and how it can be used. And this program has built a team within Taylor Wessing who have a broad understanding of AI. And that's enabled them to develop trust in the tools that they're building, but also empower them to be able to go and communicate properly with their stakeholders and so that they can understand the technology that they're building and trust it and deploy it successfully. And this is an example of one of the tools that was a result of that collaboration with Taylor Wessing. It was actually the first thing that we built with them. By working with the team at Taylor Wessing, training them through our platform, training them on AI, we actually worked with them collaboratively on this first tool. We built a tool that in this case helped to take some of their legal expertise that they've got around the Modern Slavery Act and wrapped up that expertise into what is a self-service tool that enables and automates what was previously a really resource and time-consuming and expensive process, which is matching client circumstance to changing legislation. That's freed up the lawyers who had previously been involved in that to go and focus on higher value services to their clients and ultimately on generating new sources of revenue, which they wouldn't have been able to access before. Now, for me, the really exciting thing about the Taylor Wessing story is they've now gone off, because their teams understand the space and understand the technology, they've gone off and have built their own sets of tools, all sorts of different things that we have no idea what they've built. They've gone off and found use cases across their organization without our support, because we've built teams that understand the technology and can understand and mitigate the risks. So we are increasingly seeing more and more automation and AI technologies across the legal space. And they are giving automated legal advice, right the way through from that to kind of document tagging, those kinds of things that you'll probably be familiar with. But it's pretty clear that as this evolves, the future of the legal sector is going to be more and more automated, until eventually we'll see disputes settled by automated agents. In fact, Deloitte are predicting that by 2025, we'll be hearing AI will see you in court. Now, if we get to that point, bias is going to become a really crucial problem to solve. And actually, it's going to be very important that the decisions that are made by these automated systems aren't biased in the data that they're providing or the answers that they're giving. Now, to avoid bias, it's going to be crucial that we give humans a right of explanation for the decisions that these tools are making. It has to be transparent and it has to be open. Now, there'll be lots of, you'll be familiar with where some of these bias can creep in. Lots of it's been quite high profile. There was the ProPublica report recently which showed that most AI algorithms in this space have a tendency to discriminate on the basis of race, for example. In the US, there's the now famous State versus Loomis case, which was where some technology, it's called Compass, was providing risk assessments that were used as part of a sentencing hearing. And actually, the defendant in that case challenged the use of that technology in court. And that's because the methods behind the decision-making that was going on there were not revealed either to the court or to the defendant. It was proprietary and black box. Now, he was denied a Supreme Court hearing, but regardless of actually the outcome, the fact that it's proprietary and black box and no one can understand the way that those decisions were being made does harm in our ability to make this transparent and make this open and roll out these kind of technologies. Similarly, the traditional question of capacity to give advice faces new kinds of problems when you're talking about AI. If we have AI systems making legal decisions, making legal judgments, who is it actually giving that advice? Well, the only answer to that can be through a transparent and auditable piece of technology that a human expert can look at and verify the answers that are being given. So human-down explainable AI with a full rationale is the only way you can solve these problems. The only way that you can avoid being kept in the dark about the decisions that are being made by these technologies. And you can do that by keeping a human in the loop, by building these technologies around your people and empowering your people to understand and be part of the process in building these systems. And a lot of people think that implementing these technologies needs to necessarily introduce risk, but actually it's quite the opposite. By implementing AI, you can mitigate risk in your organization. You can mitigate the risks of lack of consistency of judgment, lack of transparency, by letting machines take the heavy lifting from the way this decision-making is being done. I think the real risk for firms is missing the boat and losing out to competitors, not adopting this technology. So explainable, transparent AI that law firms can productively use against a solid business strategy is the only way that firms are going to be able to adapt to this evolving legal landscape with optimism and with innovation. Thank you.